ladies and gentlemen. I'm Phil Norris, candidate for Alabama's 4th Congressional District. I'd like to take a few moments to talk to you about the 28 Principles of Liberty that has been discussed in a book called The 5,000-Year Leap. And let's see if I can get that up there. The 5,000-Year Leap. Let me back it up. A Miracle That Changed the World. This is Principles of Freedom 101. And this book was published by the National Center for Constitutional Studies, and the author is Mr. Skousen. Now, this book is pretty powerful, and as you would imagine during election year, I think 28 Principles of Liberty is a very good topic to talk about, and the hopes that you will understand these principles of liberty. And when you go to the polls and you start looking at candidates for president or for Congress, members of Congress like myself, or even the local leaders, that you would look at leaders that embrace these 28 Principles of Liberty. And these 28 Principles of Liberty, they were something that they were talked about by the Founding Fathers to a great deal of talk about that. For instance, Thomas Jefferson, when he was writing the Declaration of Independence, he talked about 8 ancient principles that he discovered during his study when he was going to William and Mary Law School. And he studied the ancient Israelites and also the ancient Anglo-Saxons, and he found kind of 8 common ancient principles that when they were in the prime of their existence and some of the most prosperous times that they had in those two civilizations was when they were living by these 8 ancient principles. And they were typical of a representative or a constitutional republic form of government. And those 8 principles, he took 17 days to write the Declaration of Independence once he was given the charge to write the Declaration of Independence. I'm talking about Thomas Jefferson. He took 17 days to try to incorporate these 8 ancient principles into the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, and I spoke about that on my 4th of July message earlier this year. And those 8 ancient principles talked about inalienable rights, property rights, all the inalienable rights that God gave us as people. And so he incorporated those 8 ancient principles into the Declaration of Independence. Now, going a little bit further, Ben Franklin had 5 key principles that he thought should be a part of our government. And he said these principles were really religious principles that were common to all world religions at the time. And so he talked about those, about being a creator. There is a creator, and we have to respect the creator. The creator sets laws for how we treat each other, and that mankind has a life here, and then there's an afterlife, and how we live in this life determines how we live in the next life. And those are all biblical principles, that how we talk about how we live our lives and how we have a relationship with God and all that in this life determines how we live our next life. And so all those principles were put into our founding documents, and then Mr. Skousen looked at these a little more in depth, and he came up with 28 principles that he called the 28 Principles of Liberty that I'd like to talk to you about. And what I'm going to do is, over the next few weeks and months leading up to the 2016 election, I'd like to give you a little bit of a snapshot of each of these ancient principles. And so today, all I'm going to do is kind of outline those principles for you and to kind of whet your appetite for what's coming later in future videos, okay? And so the first principle of liberty, this is a key principle. All these are real key principles, but I would like for you to consider them and digest them and think about those when you're getting ready to vote. Do the leaders that I'm getting ready to vote for, do they embrace any or all of these 28 principles, and will they legislate in accordance with their belief system about these 28 key principles? So I'd like for you to digest that as we go through this series. So let me go through those. It's going to be kind of quick. So 28 key principles of liberty I think is very important for us Americans. The first one is the only reliable basis for sound government and just human relations is natural law. And the course Hillsdale College put out called Constitution 101, they talk about how the founders had a appreciation for, and they recognized that our laws should be based on the laws of nature and of nature's God. So that was one of the key principles of liberty. Okay, and the second one of the 28 Principles of Liberty is a free people cannot survive under a Republican Constitution unless they remain virtuous and morally strong. So we as individuals and our leaders, and as covered in the next principle, we have to be virtuous in order for this society to work, in order for our form of government to work. We have to be law-abiding people. We have to know what the laws are. We have to be willing to abide by those to maintain order in our government and order in our society. Okay, so remember that. We have to be virtuous and morally strong. Americans have been called upon several times during our history to be morally strong. I think this is a time that we are really facing a challenge for us to be morally strong, because we're being attacked on all sides from different ideologies that go against our basic American principles and our basic moral fiber and our virtuous principles that we have just being Americans. Okay, so the third one, as I mentioned earlier, is the most promising method of securing a virtuous and morally stable people is to elect virtuous leaders. So here we are, 2016. I'm running for Congress, and so is everyone else in Congress, in the House of Representatives anyway, and a third of our senators will be running this time, and of course our president and vice president will be elected. And so we need to elect virtuous leaders, and we need to find out as much as we can about who we're voting for in the coming months to make sure we're electing virtuous leaders, okay? So that was concept number 3. Number 4 is without religion, the government of a free people cannot be maintained. Okay, think about that. If we don't, with religion comes a certain moral mindset or a moral code that helps us all deal with each other, helps us all deal with each other in a virtuous way. So religion is important in our society, okay? Number 5, all things were created by God. Therefore, upon him, all mankind are equally dependent, and to him they are equally responsible. And this goes back to Ben Franklin's rules. He put 5 principles in the documents that he drafted in our founding documents, with those 5 rules about the Creator, and the Creator must be respected and worshiped. And he has laws about how we should treat each other and how we should live our life on this earth. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, real simple. All men are created equal. Now let's talk about that a little bit. All men are created equal as far as their rights go, but obviously not all men are created equal as far as their talents and the things that they embrace in this world. So we're not guaranteed equal things on this earth. We're just guaranteed equal rights. Okay, and it's up to us what we do with those equal rights or those freedoms. Okay, so it doesn't mean we're all supposed to be as prosperous or we should all have the same material wealth or whatever, that the government's supposed to ensure that. That's totally wrong. All it's saying is all men are created equal in the eyes of the law. We should treat each other as equals in the eyes of the law, and that's the basis of our government as law-abiding citizens. We're all created equal. Number 7, the proper role of government is to protect equal rights, not provide equal things, as I just mentioned. Equal rights, not equal things. So we don't all have to be equal like in the communist form of government, where they try to make sure everybody gets the same amount of wealth, the same amount of things from the government. It's totally anti-constitutional when you look at things like that. So remember, the role of government is to protect equal rights and not provide equal things. Okay, it's a key thing. I think that's being challenged right now in our society. Okay, number 8, men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Talked about this before. Those rights that are given to us by God, not by the government. They can't be taken away by the government. They're given to us by God. They cannot be taken away by the government. Okay, and remember, among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the rights to property. And we'll talk about that as we get into these down the road. Okay. Number 9, to protect man's rights, God has revealed certain principles of divine law, and we'll get into this a little deeper as we go in. Certain principles of divine law has been revealed by God. Number 10, the God-given right to govern is vested in the sovereign authority of the whole people. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the key to turning around our government. Is the authority or the right to govern is vested in us as the sovereign authority of all the people. So if we're not engaged in government, we're not engaged in this key 28, one of the 28 principles of liberty. if we're not engaged, our liberty is going to be challenged. So we have to be vested in the sovereign authority of the whole people. Okay? So we have to take ownership of our government. We have to hold our leaders accountable. We have to elect leaders that reflect our values and reflect these key 28 principles of liberty. Okay, number 11, the majority of the people may alter or abolish a government which has been tyrannical. This was written in one of the key concepts in the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson wrote about. He said it's not only a right, it's a duty to abolish tyrannical governments when there's a tyrannical government that comes into place. And so you look at the two ends of the spectrum. When we have no laws, we have anarchy. When we have too many laws, we have a tyrannical government. We're kind of trying to balance in between that, have a society where we can all prosper and exist and live in a safe society, okay? So we are, when our government goes to the other end of the spectrum where it's tyrannical, it is our duty to abolish that government. That's written in the Declaration of Independence, a key concept that Thomas Jefferson made sure was in the Declaration of Independence. Okay, number 12, the United States of America shall be a republic. That's what we are. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. We're a constitutional-based republic. And we'll get into that as we dive into each of these individually. Number 13, a constitution should be structured to permanently protect the people from the human frailties of their rulers. Our Constitution spells out what the government can and cannot do. Okay, and all the other rights spelled out in the Bill of Rights and all the other rights are assumed that we have those rights, and it's not the government's role to take those rights from us. Okay, so the Constitution was written to kind of limit government and how it could infringe upon our freedoms. Okay, so that's a key concept. Life and liberty, this is number 14, life and liberty are secure only so long as the right of property is secure. It's a key concept. This is one of the things that our nation was founded on, the right to property. That's one of those unalienable rights that's talked about. Okay? And property is not only homes and land, it's about the fruit of our labor. Whatever we work to earn, we should be able to keep that. It should be protected by our government. Next one is 15. The highest level of prosperity occurs when there's a free market economy and a minimum of government regulations. Ronald Reagan talked about this extensively while he was in office and before, when he was running as a candidate or supporting candidates like Barry Goldwater. He was talking about the fact that a free market economy is what drives this nation. It's what made us great. Along with our partnership with God, I think God blessed this nation, and He set us on a high hill and with high standards, and we're supposed to live up to those. And the government, whenever the government comes in with regulations, it stifles that free economy, and it makes our society and our society less than what it should be. Okay, so free market and minimum government regulations. That's when prosperity flourishes. Okay, and originally, number 16 is kind of an interesting thing because it says the government should be separated into three branches, which is the legislative, executive, and judicial. One of the key things to note is this was not originally in the Constitution until it was vetted to the states, and the states kicked back and said, hey, what about the laws of nature? Man is inherently flawed, and so there's no checks and balances in the Constitution. So then they went back and redrafted that and included the three branches of government and a system of checks and balances where those three branches have equal powers, and they should check the other two. And like they should all check each other and hold the other two branches accountable. Okay, so it's legislative, executive, and judicial. Those are the three branches. Key concept. Number 17 is the system of checks and balances should be adopted to prevent the abuse of power. I just talked about that. Number 18, the unalienable rights of the people are most likely to be preserved if the principles of government are set forth in a written constitution, and we have a written constitution. That's why we have it. They recognize the fact we had to write stuff down so we can use that as a governing document. We'll get into that individually later on, okay? And number 19, only limited and carefully defined powers should be delegated to government. All others retained in the people. I said this earlier. The Constitution spells out what the government could and should do, and all the other rights are retained by us, the people. Okay, and once the government gets outside those bounds, we should hold them accountable, which I think we've slipped a little bit in the last few decades. The government's kind of gotten out of control, and we haven't held them accountable. So I'm asking you in this election cycle to elect people that you want to hold accountable, and decide for yourself that you want to get involved in the process of electing officials and holding them accountable after they're elected. Okay? Okay, number 20. Efficiency and dispatch require government to operate according to the will of the majority, but constitutional provisions must be made to protect the rights of the minority. This has been the mantra, American mantra all the time. Yes, we have the majority of people decide what the rules are for our society as free people, but we also should protect those minorities that did not win, their voice did not win in the legislative process. That's key, because once we have laws, they should apply to all of us equally, and they should protect even the weakest of our society. Strong local self-government is the keystone to preserving human freedom. This is concept number 21. Strong local self-government is the keystone to preserving human freedom. We should take ownership of our government, especially at the local level, because it affects us the most. We're the closest to that. Number 22, a free people should be governed by law and not by the whims of men. Now let's think about some of the rulers in the world now. We have rulers in Iran, we have rulers in North Korea that on a whim, they're going out and doing things that are counterproductive or might not, or could be detrimental to those societies that they lead, just because they have some whim or some sort of personal vendetta against another country. Number 23, a free society cannot survive as a republic without a broad program of general education. Obviously, we have to have education, and we'll talk about that on how that should look. We have to educate the voters to know what a tyrannical government looks like, what a government that is out of control looks like, and what the government should and should not be doing, and have the ability to communicate that to the government in the efforts of accountability and holding them accountable to what their powers are and what they are not. Okay, and this is kind of a general statement. A free people will not survive unless they stay strong. This is number 24. We have to stay strong, ladies and gentlemen. We have to fight to keep our principles alive, these 28 principles of liberty. Otherwise, they will fall by the wayside. So will our country, so will our prosperity, so will future generations. Number 25, peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. So we have to be careful which nations we align ourselves with. Right now, we're trying to enter a nuclear deal with Iran, which I've cautioned about not approving in an earlier video that I posted on YouTube and Facebook. And I implore you to write or call your congressman to let them know that this is a bad deal with Iran. We should not be aligning ourselves in any way, shape, or form with the #1 sponsor of terrorism worldwide, the nation of Iran. Number 26, the core unit which determines the strength of any society is the family. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot stress this enough. The core unit which determines the strength of our society is the family. Therefore, the government should foster and protect its integrity. The family has been under assault for most of my lifetime. I was born in 1961. And pretty soon, we had laws taking prayer out of schools. We had laws that allowed people to abort children. We've had laws that have allowed the family unit to be insignificant in our society, which I think it's a terrible commentary on our society when the family is not protected. Number 27, the burden of debt is as destructive to freedom as subjugation by conquest. In other words, our national debt is $18 trillion currently, and that's a worse atrocity than having someone invade us, another country, and take us over. So this is a serious deal that I would like everyone to get involved in, helping us hold our leaders accountable to get rid of this national debt. That is such a burden to us and future generations as well. And number 28, the last one, the United States has a manifest destiny to be an example and a blessing to the entire human race. G.K. Chesterton wrote about this, and Ronald Reagan embraced this idea that America was the burden of was placed upon America in our founding years to be the leader, the beacon in the world, to be that shining city on a hill. And I still embrace that, and I think we can bring America back to that. I think we have to do that. I think it's what God's charge for us to do, is to be a shining beacon for the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to getting into these 28 principles of liberty individually, talking about them, and trying to create or help you understand those a little better, and how we should take those principles and move forward to get our government back in line with the founding documents and in line with these 28 principles of liberty, preserve our liberty, not only for us, but for our children and their children and future generations as well. As you know, I'm Phil Norris. I am running for the 4th Congressional District of Alabama. I would appreciate your support. I would appreciate you tuning in for future installations on this as I go through the 28 Principles of Liberty. Thank you very much. I approve this message.